The bill so that you can find out what is in it.
How can the Republican majority in this Congress explain to their constituents that trillions of dollars of new debt is good for our economy?
I first learned about the tactics and the phrase Operation Fast and Furious at the beginning of this year.
Welcome, everybody, to the Conservative Voice on a Conservative Radio Network. This is Jeff Wagner. Logic over emotion, fact over fiction, the home of independent thought, independent conservative thought. We are going to talk tonight about what, at least finally, I guess, the mainstream media is coming around to talk about, and that is Benghazi-gate, or Benghazi. Just to begin, we'll have a good conversation this evening about what we've seen to date, and I think a little bit about maybe what the consequences may be for the Obama administration. I want to open tonight with this clip from Sun News, and it was actually released on the day that President Obama spoke to the UN after Benghazi had already occurred, and it really addresses, I think, some of the things that I'm sure you've heard come out recently, but specifically targets, I guess. And appropriately so, how Barack Obama actually is coming off as our so-called leader. So we'll start with this and take a listen to it here.
The terrorist attack on the U.S. consulate in Libya and the riotous mob outside the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, were just the most obvious symbols of America's political decline in the region. Even worse, America's values are in decline, the values of freedom and democracy. So this was an important moment for Obama to speak truth to dictators, to speak freedom to tyrants of the UN. But he didn't. This wasn't a turning point where America reasserted itself and its values. It was the opposite. It was a whimper. It was a resignation letter. Let me show you 3 clips from Obama's speech today to prove my point. So here you have the leader of the world, leader of the free world, arguably the most powerful and influential man on the whole planet. And he has a global audience of the world's leaders in the room with him, and millions more watching through TV around the world. And what does he talk about? He talks about a YouTube video that some Muslim extremists allegedly object to and use as an excuse for murder and riot. He actually legitimized that absurd excuse for terrorism, which we now know wasn't even a real excuse, as the attack on the Libyan consulate was not accompanied by any protests about any movie. It was just an al-Qaeda terrorist attack. But instead of calling the attack terrorism, instead of calling for the export of freedom, Obama does what he always does abroad. He made apologies for America. Look at this.
Is a crude and disgusting video sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video, and I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity.
Obama is legitimizing the excuse that if something offends you religiously, you can murder and riot. And then seriously, the President of the United States lowered himself to what, a film critic? And said that its message of this YouTube video has to be rejected. Since when does the U.S. government tell people, Americans or foreigners, that they have to reject a criticism of religion? Could you imagine a U.S. president like George W. Bush telling the United Nations to reject some anti-Christian movie like The Last Temptation of Christ? It would be absurd, petty, unconstitutional, unprofessional, pitiful, childish, so out of his depth. That's Obama. He went further. Listen to this.
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
What does that even mean? Well, according to the Quran, according to the Sharia law, according to the law followed by Obama's father, a Muslim man named Barack Obama Sr., and according to Obama's Muslim stepfather, it is slander to deny that Muhammad is God's prophet. So to the secular, illiterate media party, they probably thought, oh, Obama's being courteous by saying we shouldn't slander any religion. But to Muslim leaders in the room, Obama said something very different. He said no one should criticize Muhammad or Islam, because in Islam, the religion Obama was born into, the religion of his father and stepfather, criticism of Islam equals defamation of Islam. Could you imagine George W. Bush saying, the future must not belong to those who slander the Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior? Of course not. He'd be impeached. But 2 weeks after Islamic terrorists storm a U.S. embassy and murder an ambassador, you have an apology speech in which the U.S. president condemns criticism of one religion. To hell with the First Amendment that protects such criticism. I want to show you just one last clip. Look at this.
Understand, America will never retreat from the world. We will bring justice to those who harm our citizens and our friends, and we will stand with our allies.
Really? America will never retreat? It's retreating every day. It quit Iraq and handed that country over to Iran's surrogates. Iraq is becoming a colony of Iran, just like Syria is. Obama is abandoning the war on terror in general. After the attacks on the embassy, he announced he's going to release 55 more terrorists from Guantanamo Bay as a goodwill gesture. I'm not kidding. He's abandoned Israel. He hasn't visited. He won't meet with the Israeli Prime Minister. He's abandoned anyone worried about Iran's nuclear weapons, always giving Iran more time, never a deadline, always another appeasement. It used to be that there was no better ally than America and no worse enemy. Can that be said today? America's allies are abandoned, like Iraq, or snubbed, like Israel. America's enemies are subsidized, like Egypt, or coddled, like Iran. America's values are not defended. Its national interests are not defended. Obama's speech went on for half an hour, but I can sum it up for you in a 2-second clip. Look at this. Yeah, that's America under Barack Hussein Obama.
And that clip was Barack Obama bowing to the Saudi king. There's a lot to this, and you know, I think what the Obama administration depends upon is that you, the average American citizen, go about your business, move on, move along. There's nothing to see here. You're busy. You got to go to work. If you're still married, you both have to work. You have to get out of the house. You have to pay attention to what's going on. You have to make that money. Because of those wonderful programs and handouts. That's a whole nother show, but seriously, think back over Barack Obama's first term and so far what we're into in his second term, and think of the instances in which he has really defended or supported Islam. Versus those where he really has demonstrated what we would call traditional Christian values. And I know everybody says he's such a great father. Do you think a great father, a role model, is the type of guy who learns of an attack occurring in Benghazi at 5 p.m. and then goes to bed, doesn't support those people, doesn't give those people help, doesn't try to rescue those people? Do you think a good father, a good role model, a good American is the type of person who goes down and makes a speech after 13 people are killed in a United States military base from a man who's a known extremist, who screams Allahu Akbar before he murders those people and calls it workplace violence? Do you think that's a good role model? Do you think a man who loves to make power grabs by signing well over 900 executive orders that infringe upon the constitutional rights of every one of us is a good role model? Do you think that's a good father? I don't think so. I think when you look at this man, it's really seriously no wonder why people question whether he is truly Christian or if he really is still stuck in his roots of Islam. And make no mistake about it, I mean, obviously, the percentage of radical Muslims are the Muslims to worry about. I just wish the moderate Muslims would, pardon me, get off their ass. Why tolerate this type of behavior from people who claim to believe in Allah as you do? I think that if you look back and you remember the whole debate about building the mosque close to Ground Zero. I think if you look at, just from a leadership standpoint and a core belief standpoint, if you look back at the vocal support for Occupy Wall Street versus the lies and condemnation, and now the IRS even comes out and apologizes for admittedly targeting Tea Party groups or groups that have the word patriot in them, God forbid. When it comes to tax-exempt status, delaying those things, investigating those groups. Why don't people look at this? I mean, Barack Obama is a collectivist. The one area we should all be collectivist in is in reflecting upon this man's record. The clip I just played, they talked about, if this was a Republican, it obviously would be impeached, which I really wholeheartedly agree with. I think that any Republican who has a record of a Barack Obama, or similar, I guess, in the on the extreme right, as Barack Obama is on the extreme left, there would be an outcry, an uproar, and Barack Obama's only saving grace to date has been his Pravda. In other words, his media, his lapdogs, people who shove the message down the sheep of the United States. People who are too busy or don't want to understand what reality is. Case in point, look at the news coverage of the past few days. Here we have this enormously important hearing going on Benghazi. Four people dead. No answers forthcoming. Kind of like Fast and Furious. Of course, people forgot about that one. And Obama goes down, and what's he do in Mexico? He blames the United States for Mexico's drug and gun problems. What a joke this man is. So, impeachment? Yes, absolutely. I know that there are some petitions going around right now. I'm happy to say I signed one. This man is an abomination, pun intended. When you look at Sean Smith's mother, and you look at her on TV or listen to her on the radio, and you hear that when the bodies were flown back, Obama, Hillary Clinton, Rice, and others walked by her, hugged her, and at that moment talked to her about this video and the fact that they would get this person who was exercising his First Amendment rights, who they knew did nothing that resulted in the attack in Benghazi. They used an American citizen as a scapegoat who, by the way, is still imprisoned and will be released in June, from what I understand. They imprisoned this man for saying some insightful things. Yes. Was the video ridiculous? Yes. So what? So was Jersey Shore.